Welcome to the College Connection podcast, a podcast presented by the College of Registered Nurses of Newfoundland and Labrador. This is the College Connection podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the College Connection podcast. The College Connection podcast is made available to RNs and NPs as a resource to promote good practice and highlight the importance of regulation in healthcare. This is a continuation of Season 5, and we have a special series dedicated to licensure renewal. This episode provides the audience with important tips and considerations related to licensure renewal and Alinity. My name is Kelly Kane, and I am a nursing consultant with policy and practice at the college.
And my name is Michelle Carpenter. I'm a senior nursing consultant with policy and practice with the college as well.
Michelle and I are pleased to welcome back Julie Wells, Research and Policy Offers, and the lead for Alinity here at the college. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks, Kelly. It's my pleasure.
Julie, before we move into the tips and considerations related to profile updates in Alinity, I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the features that Alinity has on the homepage when a registrant logs in.
Sure. So alternatively, we have also referred to this section as the dashboard, the member dashboard. So you might, if you get messages from us, you might hear it called the dashboard. Just know that it is the homepage that when you log in to Alinity as a registrant. So in the top side, if there are announcements, this is where we will put important information regarding the one that's there now is about the council and board elections being on hold. We will put messages about important messages about renewal, reinstatement, and sometimes these messages can be tailored to the type of license that you have. So if you have an inactive or non-practicing membership, you will see messages specific to that designation or that status. Along the left-hand side of the dashboard, you will see buttons like Home to bring you back there if you're in another section. My Documents, where you will see previously completed profile updates. If you are a member of the college before we launched Alinity, your invoices, historical invoices and receipts will be in there that you can use for your income tax. There's also a section for groups and documents and a section for called PAD for payment. If you want to use the college's payment process to prepay for your license. In the middle section, there is also a section for your invoices. If you have an invoice that was previously paid, you can see and download that if you need it. And your current license status will be there. And when renewal opens, you will see an option for renewal.
Excellent. Thanks, Julie. Can you talk a little bit about My Profile in Alinity and why it's so important that registrants keep this up to date?
Sure. So My Profile is a part of all of our forms in Alinity, but you can also go in at any point and update it using the My Profile section from the menu on the left. It is where you will have your demographic and your practice information. So it's very important to keep your contact information up to date. So if we need to contact you, if your regulator is looking for you, it's usually pretty important that we get in touch with you. So it's important that we have an up-to-date email address and phone number. The information that you record there is also going to be on our public directory, where patients or clients can look up to confirm that you are currently licensed. Your employer will use it to verify that you have a current license to ensure that you're eligible to work. Pharmacists will use it to verify licensure and prescriptive authority for nurse practitioners and RN prescribers. We also use the information from your profile update to provide data to system partners like Nurses, which is a new national initiative for nursing licensure verification, for the Canadian Institute for Health Information, and the provincial government, as an example, for their Health Human Resource Plan.
Perfect.
So
Thanks.
we will keep your information private and protected. When we share this type of information, it typically is anonymous summaries or if we do include record level data, we will anonymize your registration number, so it can't actually be linked back to you, where your registration number is public on the member directory.
Perfect. Thanks, Julie. That's really good to know.
Julie, I'm wondering if you could speak about how registrants should enter their place of employment in Elinity. We get a lot of questions about employment status.
Sure. The first thing that is important to note is that you can't enter NLHS as an employer. So you have to enter the specific site. So St. Clair's or the health science or a community health site, for example. If you have multiple employers, you have to include each one. It's important for us, not just for us to know exactly where you're working, although that is important, but during renewal, in order to record your practice hours, they are done by the specific employer. So if you have multiple employers, you will need to enter them all in order to account for all of your nursing practice hours. There are high definitions related to your employment role. For example, surgery is equivalent to an OR nurse for your area of practice. And on your renewal form, there is a little icon with a blue question mark that you can click, and that will pull up a little dialog box where you can click a link to be able to view the actual high definitions if you're not sure which to enter. So you can update the details of your employment, your status, your role, your area of responsibility at any point. You don't have to wait for renewal to do that. One thing that is important is you cannot change the employer itself. So if, for example, you are working in the OR at St. Clair's and then you take a job and work at the OR in the Health Science Center, those are specific employment records in Alinity. So you can't just go in and change the employer site from St. Clair's to the Health Science. What you have to do is enter a leave or end date in your St. Clair's employment and create a new employment record for the Health Science and then enter your information in there. So we do get questions sometimes about, I can't change the name, but it's because it's creating an individual employment record for each employment site. So
Excellent.
If you change sites, you need a new one.
And what about self-employment, Julie? What special things should we think about there?
Self-employment, you have, there is an option in one of the type of contract where you can specify that you are self-employed. And of course, we do have our own self-employment document where you have a checklist for information. You can connect with Michelle and Kelly on that and discuss whether or not your practice, your self-employment practice is nursing practice and can be used for your practice hours.
Yeah, great tip. And that document is on our website under our practice resources, self-employment, and the checklist is at the end of the document that needs to be submitted to practice. And then it's reviewed and then forwarded on to registration to put on your file. So thanks so much there. Thanks, Julie. Is there anything else related to the profile update that you want to let registrants know about?
I'd just like to reiterate that, like I said, you can access your profile update at any time. The current regulations state that you have to update your employment information within 30 days of a change. So don't just wait for renewal to go in and update it in January. You can go in and access your profile update at any time. And your profile update, once it is submitted and approved, is saved in the My Documents. So even the one that you complete during renewal with your practice hours, that your self-reported practice hours are in the PDF in My Documents. So if you need proof of what you've reported, that will be there in the My Documents section in a profile update that you complete with renewal.
Great. That just brought to mind about some of the issues that Kelly and I have when we do the CCP audit, where people are not changing their name. So trying to, find out where these individuals are, or to, to make contact. So can you give us a tip about should you, get married, get divorced, and changing your name and the responsibility of that?
Yes, absolutely. Again, it is in the regulations that within 30 days of a name change, you are supposed to let us know. You can do that again in the profile update. There is a section there where you can change your name, tell us what your new name is, and then upload a document to provide proof, because it is, we need proof of a legal name change before we will do that. A driver's license, a birth certificate, a marriage license, any of those things could be used as proof. Certainly contact the registration department if you have questions about how to do that. But yes, we do need that information. And another good example for those employed with NLHS who are on payroll deduction, if the name that you give your employer doesn't match the name that you give us on your record, it is very difficult for us to match and make sure that your payroll deduction is applied to your renewal. So that's another important reason to make sure that your name matches.
Absolutely. And I guess too for the public, if they, want to look your name up on the public directory and it's not the same, that might be difficult for the public as well, should they want to, connect
Absolutely.
with the Department of Professional Conduct Review. So
Absolutely.
great point.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Employers as well. Same. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Julie, we encourage registrants to log their CCP throughout the licensure year, and registrants can access their CCP plan by clicking on My Learning, which is on the left-hand side of the homepage in Elinity. However, we've had several phone calls from folks who are on leave and are inactive or may have a non-practicing membership who have accessed My Learning to log their their learning activities. And now they need to open a reinstatement application, but they can no longer see their learning. We get this question quite a bit. What do folks need to do to find themselves in this situation? How do they rectify that? Because we get a lot of questions related to, being on a non-practicing membership. And as Brad has said in a former episode, that is changing so that you would select inactive on leave or inactive resign in good standing. But how do we, if we're on that type of leave, how do we reinstate our license when we're off?
Yeah. I'll start by saying that by default, the CCP learning plan is for the current licensure year. So this is why this happens. Registrants who are reinstating can log their learning from the past 12 months. 12 months within the date of when they are expected to return to work. So some of their learning activities could be in a previous licensure year. So in order to make that work, Alinity needs to use a learning plan from the previous year in the reinstatement application. So if you're using the reinstatement form for 25-26, the CCP learning plan that's in there is actually 24-25. So it's tied specifically to the reinstatement application, and it's not the form that's available in general in My Learning, which is why if you've previously logged in My Learning, once you start reinstatement, it's a completely different form. It's not going to be in there. So what you can do to help prevent this from happening, My Learning we've turned off. So it's not available for people on the inactive register, just so that you don't end up having to log it twice in My Learning and then again in reinstatement. So if you are in this situation, it's very important to know that your learning is not lost. It's just not in the reinstatement form. So you should contact us, someone at the college, Kelly or Michelle, or the registration department, so that we can access the entries and return them to you.
Excellent.
I do have a couple of tips specifically related to reinstatement.
Perfect.
Reinstatement is meant for the current licensure year. So if you can, you should consider waiting to start the reinstatement form until the licensure year that you plan to return to practice. So in the meantime, you can use Word or a text app on your phone to keep track of your learning while you're off, and then copy and paste the entries into the reinstatement form once you've started. So remember that you can only use your learning activities within 12 months of your return to work date for reinstatement. So if you're reinstating from May to March, your learning hours requirements for renewal will be prorated. So if you come back, the number of hours that you'll have to complete in order to renew for the next licensure year will be prorated by 2 hours per month, which I think Brad also mentioned in the previous registration recording.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Okay,
Thanks, Julie. Yes, and Michelle and I, we certainly have had some phone calls from registrants who've been quite worried that their learning entries have been lost, but we were able to retrieve that for them. So that's great. Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome. Yes, and if we can't get them, the staff at SoftWorks can pull them out for us.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thanks. And Julie, can you share some important tips or considerations related to the CCP plan in Elinity?
Sure. So there's a few things. Anything with a red asterisk means that it's mandatory. It's a mandatory field, and you'll get an error if you try to submit without completing it. There is a minimum and a maximum character limit for the descriptions of your learning activities and your summative evaluation, and it is characters, not words. So you have to pay attention to the hours and the minutes. You have to enter both. So if you've done a 30-minute, you have to put 0 hours and 30 minutes, not just the 30-minute. When you click add, a new window opens at the bottom of your previous entries. That's an important one to know. And you cannot click add multiple times if there's a blank entry on your form. That's something we brought in last year because people were not aware that the new entries are at the bottom. So they were clicking add multiple times and they had blank entries on their form, and it was a bit of a mess, but we've fixed that. So if the add button is grayed out and you can't click it, it means that there's an open blank entry somewhere on your form. A new feature that actually came out just last month in Alinity is an automatic save. So if you do close your browser without saving your entries on any form, not just your CCP form, it will be saved by your browser and retained so that when you log in the next time, it should still be there. It's very important, if that does happen, that you do click save so that it actually gets saved to the system and not just retained locally in your browser. There is a caveat that some browser security features, particularly if you're using a browser, a computer at work, they might have extra security features that prevent this data from being saved. So it might not work in all situations. And it's still important, like I said, to save and log out when you're done. There is one thing if you are completing your CCP or using any Elinity form at work, because it does automatically save it in your browser. If you don't click save and log out, and it's a remote possibility, but it could happen, and the next person who uses that computer logs into Elinity, what they'll see is your information. So we've we've reduced the amount of time that that the Alinity will stay open without logging out, without closing automatically. So it now times out after just 10 minutes of inactivity. And that is to help prevent you're not logging out and someone else being able to see your information. It's a very remote possibility that if you're using a public computer, that someone else is going to try to log into Alinity immediately after you. But we are trying to, try and safeguard your information as much as possible. So if you do step away from your computer after 10 minutes, it will automatically log you out and you will have to log back in again. But that's that security feature.
Perfect, thanks. And thanks for that clarification about being saved in the browser, because I don't think I was completely understanding that as well. It's just saved to that browser. So there still is that risk there. So being in that habit of clicking the save button on a regular basis is probably a good practice to have, so people don't lose their entries.
Yes, it
and
absolutely
also
is.
You mentioned about adding learning activities and how it goes to the bottom. Sometimes people have found themselves in the situations where they've had blank entries, and should that occur for anybody, we just tell them, to put 0 in for the hours, 0 in for the minutes, and you can write in the both text boxes that this error or this entry was added in error, because once a box is opened and saved, it can't be deleted. If you didn't press save, you can actually delete that box. There's a little trash can there, but once it's saved, you won't be able to delete that. So you can definitely just add that in there, just say that it was entered in error. Or if you have more learning, of course, to do, you can certainly use that at a later time as well. So just want to mention that, because we do get that question regularly as well.
Good. And Kelly, can I just note as well, for the minimum and maximum characters Julie mentioned, it won't show up that you're over characters until you hit, save for later or submit, which you can do both to save your information. But we get questions. I've entered it in all my learning, and it will allow me to progress. And when we get those calls, we say, well, how many characters do you have in that box? And so it doesn't have that number come up to say that, you're at, 15,000 characters, but you really need to be cognizant that there is those maximum limits. And if the system is not allowing you to save or submit, it's probably because you're over the characters or you're missing information. So just have a look at that. So Julie, anything else you want to just mention about that?
Generally, if that does happen, if there's an error on your form, on any form in Alinity that you submit, it will, the box will turn red to try and make it a visible cue that this is where you need to fix. And in that case, you might have more than one box. So I'd encourage you to scroll through the full learning plan and make sure that there are no red boxes to indicate missing information, or if you have a text box with too many characters before you try and save and submit again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Michelle and I are getting pretty good at eyeballing if someone is over that character limit.
Yep.
And also, just to let our audience know that Michelle and I will be doing another recording related to CCP as well. So we'll get down into the nitty gritty about the CCP plans.
Yep.
Julie, during licensure renewal, registrants are asked to verify that they have their professional liability protection, or their PLP. So registrants need to pay the Canadian Nurses Protective Society before renewing their license. Is that right?
Yes, CMPS is required. You can't submit your any form that will lead to a practicing license. You can't submit it without having your CMPS verified. So that includes renewal and reinstatement and a practicing RN license application. It's a simple process to confirm it. You just have to click the Click Me button in the CMPS section of the form. It's definitely easier if you purchase your liability protection before you start your renewal or reinstatement process. But we have also included a link directly to the CMPS website on the form, so you can easily get it there if you need to. There are a couple of other considerations for the CMPS confirmation process that I'll share. It is designation specific, so you need coverage that matches your designation. So if you're a nurse practitioner, you must have NP, professional liability protection. Same for RN or RPN. And this one is particular to the practicing license and the initial practicing application and reinstatement, not renewal. But your CMPS coverage must start on or before the effective date of your license. So I'll just explain that a little bit. In Elinity, the effective date of your license is typically the date that your application is approved and your invoice is paid. So some of our forms, like reinstatement, interim license, and the initial practicing application, have a section that allows you to select a future effective date for your license. So if your CMPS coverage starts at a future date, you must enter a future effective date for your license. So this is a system check to ensure that your license does not become effective before your liability coverage starts, because it is illegal to practice without a liability protection. So the system will not allow you to do it. So for example, if you're completing a reinstatement on April 15th and your liability protection starts on May 1st, because that's the date you're actually returning to work, you must enter May 1st as your license effective date, or the CMPS confirmation process will fail and you won't be able to submit your application. The obvious exception is renewal. There is no section on the renewal form to select a future effective date because it assumes that it becomes effective when the new licensure year starts on April 1st. The invoice payment date does still apply to renewal though. So if you don't pay your renewal invoice until April 2nd, your CMPS will still be okay, but your license won't become effective until April 2nd. So if you worked on April 1st without paying the invoice for your renewal, you've worked without a license. So that license effective date is still tied to the invoice payment on renewal.
Right. And we don't want individuals going down having conduct deserving sanction because they practiced without a license or practiced without liability protection. So
absolutely.
That's really good to know, Julie. And we had a recording with Brad Walsh, the Director of Registration, who walked through that process. And for most people, when you hit submit, you'll be brought to pay an invoice. Now, there's some people who don't need to pay that invoice because they are on that pre-authorization plan or payroll deduction, where it's automatically paid, so your license is issued. But so if for some reason you submit your application and then you're brought to pay your invoice, but you get called away for some reason, just don't forget to go back in and pay that invoice, because like exactly what Julie just said, your license is not issued until you do have that invoice paid.
Yeah, and you will
That's
get an
good.
email reminder that you've got an
Good.
approved form with an outstanding invoice.
Good. Okay.
Good. Excellent. So, Julie, during licensure renewal, the college has several questions about consent. Can you talk about some of those consent questions and what they mean?
Sure. So we do provide a small number, we've reduced them, of consent questions on, it's a part of the profile update form, so it's on every application, including renewal. So it's stuff like, do you want to receive the monthly practice e-newsletter? Do you want to receive invitations to participate in research? And would you like to be involved with the college? So you can say yes or no to either of those questions. And importantly, you can change your mind later. So if you say no to one of those, and then in April, you can fill out your profile update form and update it because you've a colleague shared the practice newsletter with you and you said, hey, I'd like to get that one too. So you can go in and update the consent there for yourself. There are some specific ones for nurse practitioners, particularly related to the voluntary participation in the Choosing Wisely Newfoundland and Labrador and Quality of Care program, and two related to consent to release your name to pharmacists, and one for the public health laboratory. So again, they're voluntary. You can say no to them. But if you change your mind, you can definitely go in on a profile update at any point and say yes, and alternatively, if you say yes and you don't want to, you can go in and change it to no.
Thanks. So is there anything else that you would like registrants to know about the Elinity database? Any extra tips that we haven't spoke about yet?
There is one. We have had a few instances recently of people with a specific type of email who are unable to log in. There are older types of emails, like Simpatico is one example. We're not sure why this is happening. The emails are being generated by Alinity, but for some reason they're not actually reaching the recipient. So if during the login process, for example, if you haven't logged in a long time, you need to do that two-factor authentication that Brad demonstrated in the previous recording, where you need to get a code that's sent to your email. And obviously, if the emails are not going to your email address, they're not being received, you're not getting that code, so you can't log in. So we will advise you to contact the registration department. One thing that you definitely could do is to create a new, even temporary email address, like a Yahoo or a Gmail. The registration staff can change your email address on your profile for you to that new email, so that when you try to log in again, you should be able to retrieve the code and log in and then complete your renewal. Again, it's not happening a lot. It is very limited, but it is a significant frustration because people are attempting multiple times to log in and they're just not getting the email. So definitely reach out to the registration department if you are in that situation, and we will try to assist you.
Perfect. Thanks, Julie. Oh, sorry. And I just want to clarify, it's more of like those older email addresses, like you
Yes.
gave an example, Simpatico. And I have seen some registrants with a Simpatico email address, but yeah, okay, just that's good to know that it seems to be limited to those older email addresses.
Yes. Yeah. And again, the system is sending them. It's just for whatever reason they're either being blocked on the recipient end, they're not being delivered for some reason. We haven't figured that out yet. But the easiest solution would be to create even a temporary email address.
And Julie, with any platform, with technology, new features get, created and updated. So how would registrants find out about those?
Well, the Alinity platform is updated monthly. They frequently add new features and do security updates. If there is a significant new feature, we have put them in the notes from the practice team. For example, the new feature that came out in December around the automatic save, we've included that. So that is one way we can communicate it. Also in the announcements, if there is a significant change in how Alinity functions, we'll put it in an announcement so that when you log in, you will be able to see it.
Great. And Julie, one other thing that came to mind in our previous episode, Brad talked about that your CCP has to be completed for licensure renewal, but some people might have some learning that they want to do in March. And so they don't have their 24 hours of learning completed, but they must, to avoid that admin fee of, by not having your license renewal process completed by March 1st. Could you talk a little bit about that before we conclude?
Sure. So if you are in that situation where you definitely need learning to be completed in March in order to meet your requirements, what you can do is in the CCP section, you have to start your renewal and you still have to submit by March 1st, which is the admin deadline. Otherwise, if you're submit after that, you will be assigned a late fee. So you definitely need to start your and submit by March 1st. But what you can do in the CCP section, there is a section at the bottom when your requirements are not met that actually says requirements not met. And there's a declaration that you can check to say, I need to complete learning in March. I recognize that I still need to complete CCP in order to renew my license. But then it will allow you to go to step 3 to complete your CMPS and your declarations and successfully submit your application. And that we will return your form to you in that case, so that will give you access to continue to log your CCP until you meet those hours. But when your application is approved, the late fee won't be assigned as long as you submit it before before March 1st.
Yeah. And so the key here is to ensure you remember to complete that learning by March 31st, because
Absolutely.
Everyone has to have their licensure full steps, 3 steps completed by the end of March 31st, because we don't want anyone practicing April 1st without a license to practice,
Absolutely.
right? So we give you that leeway, but you must ensure your CCP is completed by March 31st. And try not to wait until March 31st should you run into issues. So try to log that learning as soon as you can to complete those 24 hours of learning. Is that not correct?
That's right. Yes. And I believe this year, March 31st is on a weekend. So if you leave it until the very last day, there will not be staff available to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, that concludes our episode about Alinity and some important tips and consideration that will hopefully help our registrants during renewal, but also throughout the entire year. Thank you, Julie, for sharing this great information, and thanks to our audience for tuning into today's episode. Remember, all episodes of our podcasts can be put towards your CCP requirements, and also remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we encourage you to like, renew, and leave a comment whenever you can. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the College of Registered Nurses of Newfoundland and Labrador.